Kalimera, Thessaloniki. How you all doing out there? We good? Now, I got an email from Patroklos saying, would you like to come to Greece and do a conference? That was in January 2020. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. And then stuff happened. And then more stuff happened. And then they got busy. And then I got busy. And I have finally made it here after 4.5 years. It is awesome to be here. Now, for me, the most exciting thing about being here, fantastic event. I'm really looking forward to the next couple of days. But I noticed on my way in yesterday that this venue, this building that we're all in, today and tomorrow, we got Vox Days Thessaloniki going on, but also in the same building is CatCon and the Mega Cat Expo. And I told a couple of friends about this, and my friend Arthur came straight back with, developers versus cats, who hurts who? So that's going on Saturday, tomorrow, in the other half of this complex. All I'm going to say is anybody who's presenting with one of these laser pointers, be careful. You might get little paws chasing it around the presentation. And we're here this morning to talk about email. Because, email is it's like the foundation of so much digital stuff that we do, so much stuff we do online. If you forget your password, websites are like, oh, we'll just send you an email, it's fine. And we assume if you have the email, then you're the right person. And quite often, this is Adobe Creative Cloud. Once in a while, I got to open it up on a new laptop. It's like, oh, we just need to verify who you are. Like, I can't run Photoshop until I've received that email. And we just assume that email works. We assume that it works all the time. And we generally assume that it's instantaneous, right? Like you send an email and it'll be there within, a couple of milliseconds. But I want to do a little experiment now with all of you. Now, this is an interactive participation experiment. What I'd like you to do, I want you to scan that QR code with your phone. Now, very important, I know developers are really good at reading documentation and following instructions. Just in case there's anyone here who's not a developer, in a minute, you are going to see a screen with a button that says, do not push this button yet. Do you understand what that means? It means you don't push, no. Don't push the button until you get the instructions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to our live status. All right, looking good. We'll give it a couple of minutes to get all of these racked up. Now, every one of those, that is a little email waiting to go out. Now, you should have some instructions on your screen. What does it say? It says stand up. Go on, you can stand up. It's fine. Get the blood flowing, get everyone moving and breathing first thing in the morning. You see the little yellow one there? That's someone who's not following the instructions. The blue ones are people who have not followed the instructions twice. All right, that's looking pretty good. I think we have a statistically significant sample. Okay, so I'm going to count 3, 2, 1, and on 0, you're all going to push the button, all right? 3, 2, 1, go. And now, once you've sent it, I want you to go and check your inbox. And if it's not in your inbox, I want you to check your junk mail. And then once you've received the email and you've confirmed it, you can sit down. But only once you've received it. So all the ones going green, that's the people where the system has worked. That's where it's gone through perfectly. A couple of blue ones in there. That's buffering on the app that sends as many emails as fast as it possibly can. The yellow ones here, you folks who are still standing up, that's email that's been sent, but it hasn't been delivered, right? And you're starting to feel a little uncomfortable. You're like, am I going to have to stand up like all day? Is this how I spend the rest of the conference? Now, you can sit down now. It's fine. Email is governed by a set of specifications built on something called SMTP. And the latest version of the SMTP specification, this is the cloud, right? Systems go down for like 15 milliseconds and they come back and everything's resilient and cloud native. And SMTP says that if you try to send an email and the remote server is down, you should wait. You should wait at least 30 minutes before you try again. And you should keep trying for 4 or 5 days before you decide that that email could not be delivered. So on the one hand, we have this whole thing where, oh, you want to book a plane ticket? Here's your email. You want to get into Photoshop? We'll send you an email. You need to sign into Slack? We'll send you an email. Built on a spec that says, if it doesn't work first time, wait half an hour. Your boss comes over, what are you doing? Like, I'm just waiting for the email. It's like, you've been waiting for the email for 3 days now. You're like, I know, look, there's the spec. You go back to playing Minecraft or whatever. Now, the good news, you folks who didn't get the email, you ever had the meeting that could have been an email? Well, what we've got today is we have the sticker that should have been an email. So we got a load of those, so you can come down at the end and collect your special limited edition, this sticker should have been an email. Fun with email stickers. Now, my experience with email is long and illustrious, because back in the days when the internet looked like this, and you had a wizard that would connect your dial-up modem, I worked for these people. I joined this company, Spotlight, in just about 2000. And when I joined them, they used fax machines. And they hired me to say, look, we've got this business with fax machines and printed books. Can we make that, like, internet thing? They had no idea, really, what they were going for here. And I built a job information service for professional actors. So someone would go on there, like, we need someone to play the villain in our new Hollywood movie, so we need like 6'2", and they're gonna be able to fight with a sword. And this would go out to all of on our directory. Now, when this started out, we were sending maybe a couple of hundred of these things a day. By the time I handed over all that code and left that company in 2018, we were sending 250,000 emails every day. But this is not evenly distributed, because there's a phenomenon that exists in show business. We have, the Royal Shakespeare Company and all the West End theaters and the BBC. The work happens in the afternoon, because everybody gets to work, they have a cup of coffee, they sit and do nothing for a couple of hours, they go to the pub, they have a nice big lunch with lots of beer, and then they go back to work. And they're like, right, let's hire some actors. That's what we're going to do this afternoon. At exactly the same time as everybody in New York TV, Broadway, that is all gearing up. And then in Los Angeles and Hollywood, they are just having their power breakfast. And so we had a spike where every afternoon, between about noon and about 4 p.m., we would be sending sustained 10, 15 emails every second. And this isn't sending copies of the same email. These are all personalized. And just this constant stream of information. Now, you probably have a picture in your head of what a professional actor looks like, right? Most professional actors don't look like this. Most professional actors look like this. Because most professional actors on any given day do not have a job right now. Because acting, you work, if you're lucky, you work 20 days a year and make enough money to live, and the rest of the time, you sit at home on your couch refreshing your email. Because you're waiting for the next audition, because you need an audition so you can get a job. Reload, reload, reload. And if you haven't got an email for like 20 minutes, you get your phone out and you phone me. Hello, can I just check the system's all right? I haven't had any email for 20 minutes. So we had a massive incentive to build the best bulletproof email delivery system we possibly could. And that's where I learned a lot of the weird stuff that we're going to talk about today. Now, at the same time, because I'm an idiot, I was also running my own personal email server for fun. I ran a system called Qmail for about 20 years on a little server that I built for me and all of my friends. That was great fun. I learned a lot. Eventually, I stopped doing that because hosting my own email stopped being fun. It just became like a job I wasn't getting paid for. And I'm going to introduce you to some of the reasons why. But that's my background. That's the story of me with email. Now, the story of email itself, that goes back a long way. Email is older than networks. We had email before we had networked computers. This was the compatible time-sharing system that existed in the United States in the early 1960s. And it was a multi-user system. It wasn't networked. But if you wanted to, you could send your colleagues messages. And then when they got to work in the morning and they logged in, it would say, you have mail. Which is like, leaving notes on the refrigerator for the other people in your house. Only the refrigerator costs $150,000 and it's the size of a room. But when email really gets interesting, is 1969. 1969, big year for if the story of human engineering was like a Netflix show, 1969 would be the season finale because it's the year human beings went to the moon, and it's the year the Boeing 747 first flew, and it was the year that the Lockheed SR-71 broke Mach 3 times the sound barrier. It was the year of Woodstock, 3 days of peace and love and hippies covered in mud and live music. And it was the year that the ARPA network was invented, the Advanced Research Projects Agency, which quickly became the DARPANet because the US Department of Defense went, actually, we're paying for that. Can we have our initial? It's the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. Now, this is a map of the entire internet in December 1969. Before it was called the internet, 4 computers that could all talk to each other. And pretty soon after this, somebody goes, well, hang on, we've got this electronic mail thing, and now we've got this network thing. Wouldn't it be neat if we could use the computer to send a message to somebody on another computer? Like, this is some big, big thinking stuff. And the story of email has a cast of probably hundreds of people who have made pivotal contributions. But one of the most obvious ones, one of the ones that still stands out today, was down to this guy. It's Ray Tomlinson. And he was working at a company called Bolt, Beranek, and Newman, 1971, on a system that would basically, when you put mail in your mailbox file, it would use the network to copy that file and write it into somebody else's mailbox. So he needed a way of figuring out, well, who are you? And where do we send your mail? And he's looking at his ASCII chart and the keys on his keyboard. He's like, well, this one isn't being used for very much. Why don't we use that? And so we have Ray Tomlinson to thank for this convention of @ in an email address. Who are you? @ where should we send your mail? Alice @ MIT Multics. Now you'll notice it's not mitmultics.com. Because this was just MIT Multics. This was the days when the internet was so small that host names worked globally. Without any DNS, none of that kind of stuff existed. And if you wanted to connect a new computer to the internet, you had to talk to Jake. Jake Elizabeth Fainler ran the Network Information System Center at Stanford University in the United States. And she and her team basically ran the internet. They had the hosts file, which was a file. And if you wanted to add your computer to the internet, you'd ring Jake and be like, Jake, can I put a new computer on? Their office was only open during the day and it closed weekends and Christmas, so you couldn't add new computers to the internet on the holidays. But the rest of the time, you'd ring them up and they would add you to the list, and then next time one of your team went to Stanford, you'd say, oh, can you bring back a copy of the hosts file? And they'd bring it back on a tape and you'd load it onto your system. And that's how the ARPANET worked. And one of the things that they published, as well as the electronic hosts file, was the ARPANET Resource Handbook, which was a printed directory of every single person and computer that was connected to the ARPANET. And when I say directory, it looks like this. Every single person, you could see the computer, you could see the person who ran it, there's their email address, there's their phone number, mailing address. All of this information was just photocopied and passed around. And this is where the story gets interesting, because of this guy. Now, one of the bizarre things about studying the history of information technology is that history happens very, very fast. And so when I went to look up Gary Turk when doing the research for this talk, I thought I'd find like Wikipedia articles and stuff. No, he's on LinkedIn. Like, he's still out there. This is like discovering that Alexander the Great is working in Lidl down the street or something. It's like, and he bills himself as the father of e-marketing, because in 1973, Gary Turk was working as a sales rep for the Digital Equipment Corporation, and they had just invented a thing called the DEC System 20, you know, state-of-the-art computer. This could do ARPANET. This had network protocols built in. And digital, they had a pretty good presence on the US East Coast, you know, like New York, Boston. They didn't have a whole lot on the West Coast. They didn't have any sales offices. They wanted to sell a lot of these computers. So what Gary did is he got that handbook and went through it and typed in the email addresses of every single person on the internet in the western half of America, and he sent them an email. He sent them this email. Now, when his email got to here, it overflowed the headers. And so this is now the body of the email. So about 200 people got an email that started with 200 other people's email addresses, and then ends up with, hey, we invite you to come see the 2020 and hear about the DEC System 20 family. Now, this is the first example in history of somebody using bulk email as a marketing tool. Any of you folks ever, like, you've done something at work that seemed like a good idea, and then your boss comes over and is like, please don't do that again. We've been there, right? Have any of you ever done that where, like, the boss's boss gets the head office involved? Anyone ever screwed up so bad somebody called the police? Has anyone ever screwed up so bad that the United States Air Force rang your boss's boss's boss and said, this is a defense research network. If you even think about trying to use this to sell your computers ever again, so help you, we are calling in the 305th Airborne, and we will wreak vengeance upon you. Because that's basically what happened. Major Raymond Chahor phones Digital and goes, your people are not using our research network for marketing. Do you understand? Now, maybe, just maybe, that was the day we could have fixed spam. As we could have been like, but what happened? This is the 70s, and everyone is peace and love, and it's all very friendly, and the internet's quite small. Everyone's like, yeah, just don't send spam or you're going to upset the Air Force. And so people just kind of agree that maybe not sending spam is a good idea. Now, there is this, people who study, population science and demographics, they have these terms. They say that, this generation of people, these were the baby boomers, and then there was Generation X, and then there are the millennials, and then there's Generation Z, and then there's what they're calling Generation Alpha. And there's always this little gap right in the middle, which is these people here who no one's ever quite called what to call them, or to call us, because this is me. This is my generation. Now, the best way I found of classifying this, if you are Generation X, it means you were born before Star Wars came out. And if you're a millennial, it means you were born after Return of the Jedi came out. And the people in the middle were the millennial Falcons. We are this micro-generation. Because there's this like 6-year window there. And if you were born in those 6 years, what it meant is that around about the time you turned 15, the entire world got the internet. Kind of at the point where you were probably ready for it as a person, human at the same time. Is this mic strobing in and out? That's fine. And, it's analog childhood, digital adulthood. We rode bikes and our parents had no idea where we were and no one had ever seen a smartphone. And then by the time we go to university, we've got Nokia phones. And then by the time we get a job, obviously we have email, and then the rest is digital history, And it turns out the biggest millennial falcon of them all is the internet. Because 1977, when Star Wars was released, it was called the ARPANET. It used NCP networking. TCP/IP didn't exist yet. DNS wasn't around, so it was still run on the host's file. And junk mail had never happened. And by the time Return of the Jedi came out in 1983, it was called the Internet. It ran on TCP/IP. DNS was how we resolved host names, and junk mail was very definitely a thing that existed now. Now, a lot of the thinking, the person who basically created internet email or laid the foundations for internet email was this guy. It was John Postel. And he created SMTP. He wrote the specifications in 1982 for the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. And the remarkable thing about email is because it is such a valuable communication tool, there's never been email version 2 or version 3 because backwards compatibility is so important. You come up with a new email system and you say, hey, use our email. By the way, you can't email any of the other people because they're all still on email version 1, but version 2 is better. No one is going to use version 2. Which means email has one of the most amazing, backward compatibility is off the scale. You imagine you got tomorrow and you buy a new MacBook Pro with the Apple Silicon M3 chip and it's got a tape deck because you still need to be able to read files from 1983 when this was how we stored tape and stuff. It's that degree of backward compatibility. You can buy a computer right now that can speak email using the same protocol as 1982. And if you still had a PDP-10 or a Multics system from the 1980s, it could still send email, and people on Gmail and Yahoo, they could read it. No problem at all. And this kind of very rapidly gets us into, well, what's in this specification that made it so successful? And one of the many things that spec defines is the format of an email address. Now, show of hands here. Who has written code to validate an email address? Did you use a regular expression? Did it work? I mean, email address validation, we're gonna look at some addresses now. And I just want you to say, do you think this is valid or not? So we're gonna use our friends in the Avengers. So we got Iron Man, is iron.man@avengers.com valid? What do you think, yes? Yeah, we like that one. What about spider-man@avengers.com? Yeah, that's pretty good. What about T'Challa with the little apostrophe there at avengers.com? What do you think? Got a couple of people in the back going, yeah, that's good. What about Rocket plus Groot? because Groot doesn't say much, so they just share the one mailbox. That's fine. What about Bruce Hulk banner at Avengers.com with quotes around it? Oh, we got some big thumbs down coming up, like... What about vision at open square bracket IPv6 2001 colon DBA colon 1FF colon A0BDBD0 close square bracket? Oh, they're all valid. These are all valid, standards compliant, spec compliant email addresses. The rule book that you have to follow if you are building email systems says you should support all of these things. Which makes me think maybe the rule book is not the point here. Maybe validity is not the question we should be asking. Now, validation in software, a lot of the time, I've been building websites since the days when you'd put a little button on your website saying W3C valid HTML, you know. Because we were trying to do a good job, and nobody would tell us whether we'd got it right or not. Our boss had no idea. There was no standards agency, there was no assessment, the customers didn't have a clue. And so that kind of desperate search for validation, both for your code and for you as a human being with a soul, I guess the W3CX HTML validator is the best we got. And as developers, we like to validate against specifications, because that way we can relax and know we've done a good job. But email kind of doesn't work like that. Now, an email address is fundamentally two things. There's a domain part. Where is it going? And there is the local part. What happens when it gets there? Now, we're going to send some email. We're going to send some email old school using a terminal and console commands. So I'm on my DOS machine. I've got a terminal here. I'm going to do an NS lookup, network lookup. I'm going to say, hey, set type equals MX. Mail exchanger, I want to know which server handles mail for this domain, funwith.email. And it's going to come back and it's going to say, here you go, here are your exchanges, SMTP1, SMTP2. And now I can use Telnet to Telnet into that on port 25, and it'll say, hello, nice to see you. And I say, hello, DylanBeattie.net here. And it says, hi, I'm smtp1.funwithemail. And I say, I have mail from Dylan at DylanBeattie.net. And it says 250, okay. And I say recipient to hello at funwith.email. And this is where the fun starts. Because at this point, that server is going to look at that email address, and it is going to decide, do I accept this for local? Do I accept this for somebody else? Do I reject this? Do I block? What do I do with it? And this is where I wanted to do some research, find out how this stuff works in real life. So I went on Google and I looked up best email provider for doing stupid experiments. And then I thought, nah, maybe not that. Maybe I should look for best business email hosting. And I dug through, I read a whole bunch of articles with recommendations and reviews for different companies that provide email hosting services. Now, disclaimer here. I am about to tell you about some companies out there who run email for money, you know, email service providers. They are all really, really good. What I'm doing here is I'm testing the weird edge case. Like, you know, imagine if a normal person was testing cars, they'd look at the gas mileage and, you know, how good's the stereo, is it comfortable and everything. If I was testing cars, what I'd do is I'd fill the car with gravel, I'd set it on fire, push it off a bridge, and I'd be like, well, these cars exploded before they sank, and these cars sank before they exploded. It's that kind of testing that we're working with here. Now, the contenders that I identified were Office 365, Google Workspace, Zoho Mail, Proton Mail, and Fastmail. Disclaimer, Fastmail, I am a customer. I actually use them for real. The rest of them, I just went and I registered accounts to do these experiments. I didn't tell them I was doing it, and they all hate me now, but that's fine. And what I did is I registered real domains for every single one of these accounts, and then I went through and I tried to create mailboxes for all of those Avengers aliases. So T'Challa on Gmail, yeah, that worked. Office, absolutely fine. I went on to Zoho Mail. I'm like, hey, I want to create T'Challa at that. And it worked. But then the UI couldn't cope with the fact that the email had a single quote in it. I started getting error messages. So it's like standard compliant, but they forgot to tell the front-end team about that. Yeah, all right. Went on to Proton Mail, tried to do the same thing. It says, nope, only alphanumerics, not allowed. Standard says yes, Proton Mail says no, you can't have that one. And Fastmail, T'Challa just says, please check this. I'm like, all right. So there we go, we're off to an interesting start. Now, Rocket plus Groot, you cannot create this as a mailbox on any of these platforms. The reason being that there is this whole kind of ad hoc spec about something called domain subaddressing. And this was a good idea, and then it was a good idea that worked on Gmail, and then it was a good idea that worked on Gmail and a couple of others. And finally, within the last couple of years, Zoho and Outlook.com, what it basically means is that I'm like Dylan at Gmail, but I can also be Dylan plus Amazon, Dylan plus Google, Dylan plus anything. And the plus isn't part of the mailbox, but it is part of the address. So this is important, this idea that there's not necessarily, mailboxes and addresses are not necessarily the same thing. There's not going to be a one-to-one correlation. So Rocket plus Groot, that will work as an address for all of them, but it isn't a valid mailbox on any of them. Bruce Banner, in quotes, no, absolutely nobody would let me create a mailbox with a space in the name of the mailbox. But then I started thinking, all right, well, what about a single apostrophe? Can I just do quote at? Is that a valid email? Google went, yeah, you can have that. And same with Office 365. I tried to do that on Zoho Mail, invalid username. All right, that's probably not surprising. Tried to do the same thing on Proton. Yep, not allowed, not surprising. Please check this. All right, so 2 out of 5. What about a single dash? Gmail, email cannot be a single dash. What about a double dash? Yeah, single dash, no, that would be stupid. Double dash, welcome to Gmail, sir. May I take your bags? Office 365, yeah, absolutely fine. Hyphen at, that's legit. Zoho wouldn't let me, Proton wouldn't let me. Fastmail, hyphen, this name's already taken. It's not. I definitely hadn't registered that name. Yeah, all right, whatever. And then finally, I said, can I create underscore as an email on all these providers? Google said, yeah. Office says, yeah. Zoho Mail, underscore, AS101. So open up the network inspector, take it apart. What is AS101? It's a JSON message saying success. I don't know if that means it worked, but there you go. And finally, fastmail, underscore, at fm.fun with email. Great choice. So there you go. That is the 5 kind of market-leading email provider platforms with different variations on the specification and whether it worked or whether it didn't. But along the way, it occurred to me that most of these platforms, they support something called a catch-all address, which is, hey, anything we don't recognize, send it all to this mailbox. And I thought, well, if I create catch-all addresses, I wonder if I can send mail that has a space in it. And what I discovered, Gmail won't let you send the email. No, if there's a space in the email address, it's not going to send it. Proton is the same, Zoho is the same. None of these applications will let you send an email with an address in the mailbox. So to go back to this question, is an email address valid? Really, the only question you can ask is, does it contain at least one @ sign? Not exactly one, at least one. Because if it doesn't contain any, then it's not valid. And if it does contain at least one @ sign, it might be valid. We just don't know. Can an email address be case sensitive? What do you think? Yes? No? It can, if you're evil. The domain part can't, because the domain part runs on Internet DNS, and Internet DNS is case insensitive by design. But once I have delivered the mail to unix.box.edu, if the administrator wants to have 3 different users on that system called lowercase Alice, Pascal case Alice, and capital case Alice, they can do that. And Unix will do that, because in Unix, your username is your home directory is your mailbox file, and the file system is case sensitive. And when SMTP first rolled out in the 1980s, a lot of folks were kind of retrofitting it onto systems that already had users and already had email. And some of those systems had case-sensitive usernames. And so email had to support that, otherwise they weren't going to use it. And so the spec says, we will deliver it to you, but when it gets there, if you want to be case-sensitive at that point, then that's up to you. Now, the worst offender I've seen for not respecting this is airlines, because airlines just love turning your email into all capitals. So I'm guessing every time Alice buys a plane ticket, it goes to the wrong Alice, and they have all kinds of travel headaches and stuff. So that's what happens when we get to this point, is that box on the other end is going to go, hey, do I accept this email or not? And in this case, Fastmail will say, yeah, okay, you can do that. And I say data. And it says, end your data with a dot by itself. And I say, hello, dot, and it queues it, and I quit. And there we go. And we have just sent email with Telnet. It's got no subject. We don't know who it's from. We don't know who it's to. And this is where I think, hang on, I can send email with Telnet. Gmail won't let me do Bruce Banner and these things. But if I can send email with Telnet, maybe I can inject the mail directly. So I open up Telnet, and I try talking to Proton Mail, and I say, hey, I've got Fun with Email, wants to send email to Fun with Email with spaces in it, and it says protocol error. Okay, that's not going to work. Let's try another one. So I go onto Zoho Mail, and I do the same thing, Telnet all the way through, and I say Fun with Email. It says relaying disallowed. Now I'm like, oh, I'm not relaying it. Like, it's for you. It's not bouncing it to somewhere else. Didn't work. Let's try another one. Google, Gmail here. Bang, there we go. Email address, Fun with Email. That is not a valid RFC 5321 address. So A, it didn't work. B, this is lies. It is a valid RFC 5321 address. Google should know better than that. Shame on you, Google. Shame on you. I tried another one. I tried doing this with Outlook using the Microsoft MS thing. Now that one, every single network that I tried, I got relaying disallowed. I tried this from home. I tried it on hotel Wi-Fi. I tried it on public Wi-Fi. I tried it from the cloud. I tried it from everywhere. But then somebody saw a video of this talk that I did on YouTube, and they sent me an email going, hey, I've got a server that definitely hasn't been blocked by Microsoft, so give it a try. And they tried it. And it got as far as looking like maybe it had worked, but then they got a bounce message saying, sorry, we don't know who that person is. So the last one I tried was Fastmail. And we go through the steps, and I get to there, and I say recipient to, and it says, okay. Really? This was sent to an address with spaces in it. And there it is. So Fastmail will let you send email with spaces in the email address. They were the only one of these. Now, don't ever do this in real life, because nothing will ever work. But if you really want to, this proves that it's possible. Now, let's say we want to send an email to this. You'll know who this is, right? This is Lazarus Chakwera. He's the president of Malawi. And he lives in the palace, which is on Capitol Hill, just outside Lilongwe. And what we've just done there with Telnet, that's like us writing a letter to His Excellency and then flying to Malawi and going out to Lilongwe, going up the hill, knocking on the door, going, hello, we got a letter for His Excellency. And if it works, yeah, delivery. If it didn't work, well, that was a really inefficient way to find out that it didn't work, because now we got to, do we wait? Maybe he'll be home later. Maybe we go home and try again tomorrow. This is not how we send mail in the real world. It's not how we send email on the internet. We send mail in the real world by posting it. We put a postage stamp on, we print it out, and we put it in a mailbox. Now, in the real world, mail has a cost. There's a cost of engagement for every single message that you send. If you were to try to run some kind of scam just by sending people letters in the mail, you see how much printer ink costs these days? Like, you're not making any money out of advertising whatever sordid services you've got using surface mail. But email doesn't have that restriction. It's effectively free, which means that very quickly, everybody takes a leaf out of Gary Turk's father of email marketing, and they start sending junk. Now, junk is called spam. Junk is called spam because of a Monty Python sketch where some Vikings sing a song in a cafe. This makes no sense to me either. There's a bunch of people online going, oh yeah, because the Vikings start singing really loud, and then the loud messages is like your box getting overwhelmed with junk mail. I never entirely understood the connection, but this is just how email has ended up now. Some astonishing percentage of the email that is sent on the internet is unsolicited commercial junk. And the problem with email is that it was invented by hippies in California who thought like this. And this kind of worked for about 20 years. But then this comes along. The 1990s. Everybody gets online. Normal people out there, your parents get email at home. Now, the thing you've got to realize about the web and email in the 90s is it was too good to be true, but it was true. People were doing astonishing things. Like 5 years before this, say you've got a cousin in Australia and your cousin's just had a baby and they want to send you a picture of the newborn kid. It's going to take 3 or 4 weeks to send that. Now you can do it in 20 seconds. This is amazing. And the fact that it worked meant people had no frame of reference for deciding what was real or not. Your top email in your mailbox is like, hey, here is your newborn cousin. And you're like, this is too good to be true. But oh, look, it's real. The next one is Bill Gates saying that he's going to give $100 to everybody who forwards this email and you get a free trip to Disneyland. And people are like, well, the baby picture worked and that's impossible. So maybe the Disneyland thing is also true. And spam basically took off. Now, the good news is that in 2003, the United States government launched the Controlling the Assault of Non-Solicited Pornography and Marketing Act, which was hugely successful and it eradicated spam, and that's why none of us has problems with junk mail anymore. It didn't. One, it's a stupid piece of legislation that didn't work. Two, it is trivially easy to send spam without actually breaking the law. And three, it turns out quite a lot of people are not in the United States and don't care what the US government says about what you do with your inbox. So when it comes to dealing with unsolicited junk mail, we got a couple of different approaches. The first is client-side filtering, and all of us use this, most email providers use it. I'm not going to talk about that because to me as a developer, client-side filtering is not interesting because I don't care what you do with mail once I've delivered it. If you're going to filter it or put rules on it, it's your problem. There's nothing that we as developers can do to control that. The second one is we can filter it based on the envelope, if you like. We can look, who is this from? Where is it going? What is it addressed to? Has this person sent us email before? What does it look like? All of these kinds of things. We can look at the contents of the message and try and decide whether it should be routed, whether it should be validated. But the third thing is the thing the hippies should really have thought about, because peace and love is all very well, but we need peace, love, and authentication. Because the biggest problem with email is also the reason it was so successful. Anybody can send anybody email without having to create an account first. You know, I want to send you a mail message. I don't have to pre-register. I just be like, hey, I got mail for you. And it might be interesting. It might be an invitation to do something cool. So you want to receive those messages. So over the years, SMTP has been extended. Now, they didn't make it the complicated mail transfer protocol, because no one would use that. Extended simple. You want to make things complicated? Just extend the simplicity. And extended simple mail transfer protocol, that works kind of like the old system, except instead of kicking off with hello, it kicks off with hello. And if you've seen the Jim Henson Labyrinth movie, it's exactly this scene. This is what it's based on. Because when I telnet into my mail server and I say, hello, dylanbeattie.net. That EHLO, that says, hey, I speak extended simple. Let's have a conversation. And it gives me the menu. It's like, hey, this is all the stuff that I know how to do, which wasn't in the original spec. I can do authentication, and I can do TLS, and I do enhanced status codes. I'm like, all right, awesome. Let's start TLS. We're going to switch this to a secure channel, and then we're going to start again. Hello, dylanbeattie.net. And it sends back 250, okay. And I say, authenticate. Plain text, here is my username and password, base64 encoded. Now this is brilliant if you know the server you're talking to because it's your internet provider. It's your ISP, they know who you are, you know who they are. If you send spam, they know where to find you. They probably already have your credit card. This works. For sending email across the internet to strangers, it doesn't work because I don't know the credentials to sign into that server. And so this gets us into this kind of weird middle ground where we're using the same protocol for two different things. Using it to send mail, that's fine, we can authenticate. Using it to deliver becomes much more complicated. Now, this is John Gilmore, and John is he's a really, really interesting guy. He's one of those people who I support 95% of everything he's ever said, and the last 5% I'm like, no. Oh, really? You went there? John is he's an extreme libertarian cypherpunk. He was employee number 8 at Sun Microsystems. He was one of the founders of the Electronic Frontier Foundation. And he has this famous quote about the free flow of information. He says, the internet interprets censorship as damage and routes around it. You know, the internet was designed, the protocols are designed that you can destroy entire data centers and it will still work. And so if it's built to survive some kind of military attack, just putting a blocker on your firewall, it's going to try and find ways to route that traffic around. Now, John runs an open SMTP server called hop.toad.com that he insists is part of his right as an online citizen that anyone in the world can send mail through this server to anyone else in the world, and he's not going to interfere with it. This is his kind of libertarian ethos on it. I tried sending all of these demos through hop.toad.com. Nobody will talk to it. No one is interested. They're like, we are not touching mail that came out. We know where that's been. No. Well done, John. We applaud your ethos. We are not delivering your mail. Sorry, mate. Which means we get to this point of really the only way to effectively filter mail is to look at the other end of the pipe. It's to look at what happens at the point of delivery. Now, when our system receives an email, we can see the contents of that message, and we can see where it came from. We can see the network address that delivered it. And there are systems all over the internet that claim to be definitive databases of the good addresses and the bad addresses, like the real-time black hole list. Now, if you go onto some of the monitoring services, they will say, hey, is your email address is your IP address listed in any of these databases? This is why I stopped running my own mail server. Because to end up on one of these are all run, I think, by good people with good intentions who think they're making the internet a better place. But to get onto one of these lists can happen by mistake. There is no validation, no verification, and it's trivial. Someone just goes, I don't like you, put the email address in, bang, suddenly you're on the list. If you're on the list, it stops working. And so you go, we've got to get ourselves off the list. So you go and you find the page, and you're like, I'd like to request an IP address removal, and it says, oh yeah, well, you can't do this more than once a week, and it'll probably take 48 hours. And meanwhile, you've got angry actors yelling at you saying, you should be sending me email and stuff. Now, we've got a lot better at authenticating email delivery over the last couple of years. And the mechanism that we've used to do it is DNS. The brilliant, wonderful thing about email is it's like we can't really replace any of those protocols from the early 1980s. But what we can do is we can run new stuff over the top of them. And so we can use DNS to publish records saying, well, if we go and have a look at the records that belong to my Fun with Email here, you'll see we've got a record in here saying SPF 1. And this is me publishing to the rest of the world, hey, these IP addresses and these domains, they are allowed to send mail on behalf of this domain. And everybody else, and then the little character at the beginning, that is a signal saying, right, if it's a plus, it means this is good, this is legit, I approve this. If it's a question mark, now, why would you have a rule to tell the world you don't care? The reason is for testing stuff. You want to make sure the records are valid, but you don't want to affect any behavior yet. So use question marks when you're testing it. A question mark is a tilde here, that's a soft fail, which is like, you can deliver this, but tell people it might be suspicious. And then a minus is us telling the world, anything comes from here, don't deliver it. Don't tell anybody what the contents of this message. We guarantee that this is going to be junk. Now, we get as far as sending our email, and as long as the email we're sending is in 1980s 7-bit flavored American ASCII, everything works fine. There's a lot of stuff you can't do in 1970s American flavored ASCII, like cat pictures, or Greek, or Cyrillic, or all these kinds of things. To send anything more sophisticated, we're going to need to learn about something called MIME. And MIME is the multi-purpose internet mail extensions. And again, this is a really neat solution. It's a bunch of people saying, we've got 7-bit ASCII, and we've got DNS. How do we make this work with Greek and Ukrainian and Korean and cat pictures and all of this other kind of stuff? And what MIME basically does is it takes all the different things you want to put in your message, and I'm going to say, right, this message, MIME version 1.0, 1.0, by the way, this is the only floating point Boolean that exists in information tech. Because there was going to be like MIME 1.1 and then MIME 2.0 and then something else. But no one ever figured out how that was going to work, and it turned out it's impossible. And so 1.0 means true, and anything else means false. And then we're going to say, hey, this is a multi-part mixed message, and this string here, the bit that's highlighted in bold there, this is going to break up the blocks in this message. And so I'm going to say, right, we're going to start a block. There's that block. That looks like this, and it's got 2 parts inside it. MIME is hierarchical. MIME lets us build this rich kind of message made of containers, inside containers, with all of these different types of content and images and attachments and videos and whatever. And it turns the whole thing into 7-bit ASCII and crunches it all the way down, and then at the other end, MIME is the system that we can use to rehydrate that. And so, you know, we as developers, we are going to go through and we are sending these kinds of messages, and we've designed our email, we've baked it into our system, and we've got a checklist of all the clients we need to support, and we're going to do a really, really good job here. And so we're going to check it on Gmail and iOS Mail and Android and Outlook and Zoho and all these things, and it absolutely works, and it's brilliant. We've done a great job. And then we get a screenshot, and the boss is like, hey, the email doesn't work. And you're like, what do you mean the email doesn't work? The email totally works. The email works on everything, and they send us a screenshot, and we're like, oh, crap. because the company logo, that's a transparent PNG. And it turns out that while we were busy working on this, the world has invented dark mode email. Now, this kind of highlights for me everything that is wonderful and terrible about the way email works. Because if you are trying to treat email as a fixed target, as something that you can concentrate on and you can make it work, you're going to have a really bad time. Because things are going to keep changing, which are way outside your control. If you need to send email with transparent PNGs on it, now you've got to come up with a PNG that will work if the background is dark or if the background is light. And you give it 6 months, and the mobile device vendors come out with CSS rules you can use, but they don't work across the board. And so trying to treat email as a channel that you and your company control so you can absolutely lock it down, your experience of working with email is basically this. You think you got it right, and email goes, nope, I'm not going to do that. No, we've invented dark mode. No, we're not going to show attachments today. No, we're not going to render things inline. No, we're going to show people the 7-bit version. But you know what? That's what I love about it. Because email is the only way we have left that I can talk to you without a $1 trillion corporation taking their cut. If you want to talk on WhatsApp, we both need to be on WhatsApp. You want to talk on Rakuten Viber, or you want to talk on Telegram, we need to create accounts on the same system, and that system is governed by a corporation that controls who is allowed to use it. If I get kicked off WhatsApp, I can't talk to my family anymore because there's no way my family is ever leaving WhatsApp because they're kind of locked in there now. But email is still free. Email is still open. And that freedom and that openness, as we've seen, it comes with all kinds of consequences, all kinds of challenges around security and delivery and abuse and misuse. But fundamentally, it is still this protocol that's been around for 30 years that I can build a computer, I can set it up, connect it to the internet, you can do the same, and then you and I get to have a conversation that doesn't make anybody else rich. And I think that is why email it's far too important to mess up. It is beautiful, it is wonderful, and I encourage everybody, you want to talk about anything you've seen in this talk, send me an email. Thank you very much.